My name is Karen Wilkening, and I'm here with Julie Guyot, and she is an owner of her own pottery studio here in Tallahassee, Florida. So we're just going to go ahead and get started. What made you decide to open up your own business?
Well, I was teaching at Florida State, and that was during a period where the department was not in a great moment. It was right after the recession, and people were a little nervous, and so I was an adjunct, so I didn't have a long-term contract, and I just decided one semester I would try to sell my work, travel around to craft fairs, and figure out how much money I could make. And I told myself if I made the same amount of money that I was getting teaching, that I would quit teaching and do it full time. So that's kind of what I ended up doing.
Awesome.
And I think a lot of people during the recession started their own businesses because there just weren't jobs out there.
Yeah.
So they had to sort of figure out what they wanted to do and sort of start up themselves.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Was there like a specific kind of inspiration that you took for your work and your studio?
Not really. I thought about that question, and I'm not a person who typically looks at something else and says, I want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I usually know what I don't want to do,
Yeah.
And sort of work backwards from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. How much time did you kind of take, like, planning? You know, you were an artist, so did you know a lot about, like, how to start your own business, and what did that kind of look like?
No, they do not typically teach art students, art majors, anything about business, because typically in an academic setting, the scenario is that you would go on and teach, and so they sort of kind of are far removed from the business model.
Yeah.
So what I did is I took a lot of business classes once I got out of school.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that are free through the FAMU has like a small business incubator kind of situation,
Yeah.
and they have retired people who are there
That's so cool.
to offer free workshops and classes, and so I did things like that. And then I also did paid groups with business women where I learned different things. And I also I hire a bookkeeper who comes in once a month and sits with me, and we do the books together because I know that that's not my strong suit, and I have learned that it's worth the money to pay her to alleviate the stress and to make sure I know what's coming and going.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
As far as planning, I'm not a person who does a whole lot of, even when I'm starting an art project, I'm not a big sketcher. I kind of learn as I go and change things as I go, and I'm finding that is the way I work in this situation as well.
Yeah.
Again, just coming in here and being open for a week, I think I just told you, and then I completely rearranged the showroom after being here for a week because I was just noticing that it wasn't working.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, totally. What do you find like is the best way for you to kind of advertise your business?
I do anything that's free.
Yeah.
I use social media. I use Facebook, although recently Facebook has changed the way they are allowing people to see business posts. So I do, if I have a big event coming up, I will pay for advertising on Facebook.
Okay.
And I always ask my customers when they come how they heard about us so that I know what's working, what's not working.
Right.
I also use Instagram. I just recently did my first paid Instagram ad. And a lot of times it's not even the paid stuff that gets people in the door. Really? It's when you I think creating an event is really important on Facebook, because even if people are always going to RSVP and not show up, but what happens is when they click yes that they're coming, it shows up and all of their friends see it. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from people coming in for the first time saying, I just saw it on my friend's timeline.
Yeah.
So I think you can take advantage of those free situations, but you also do have to pay in order to get your stuff boosted into people's newsfeed.
Yeah, have you found that social media is the easiest kind of avenue to do paid advertisements in?
It's really easy for me. I'm going to date myself here, but when I was in undergrad, we didn't have computers.
Right.
And so, again, that is something that I have really had to sort of keep up with all the new apps and things, things happening to know how to use those in my business. And I think that those kinds of apps, Facebook and Instagram, MailChimp, which is an email campaign service that I use, is also really easy to use. So what happens for me, I want to be in the studio the majority of my time. I don't want to be on the computer. So what's nice about those apps is I can take a process shot while I'm working and immediately get it to my audience. This is how the process works, so that they understand the connection between the handmade and the finished product.
So can you tell me a little bit about your background kind of before you started your business? You said you taught at FSU, so kind of what did it look like before then?
Before that, I was working from my studio at home, and I had gallery representation from several galleries around the country, and I would make my work at home and then send it off to the galleries. And then I decided that I would try an experiment where I would sell at craft fairs and try to really get my work out there to see if I could make as much money as I made as an adjunct, and I did, and so I decided to leave my job at that point.
Okay. Yeah, and so then you went on to get your degree. Well, you said that was after your adjunct.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
then
between my undergraduate degree in 1994 and my graduate degree in 2008, I worked several jobs. I had full-time jobs. I had several part-time jobs at one time, and there was a big gap there where I was sort of out in the real world, sort of gaining some experience, and then I decided to go back to school and start my business after that.
Yeah, great. So tell us a little bit about just kind of like what a day-to-day life looks like in the studio, running your business, and kind of all that.
I try to keep a pretty, I don't want to say strict schedule, but depending on the day, I have to stay regimented to what needs to happen that day. So, for example, today I'm firing a kiln, so I typically might not be in here working while the kiln's firing. I might be doing computer work at home or bookkeeping or running errands. My schedule right now is that I'm open for retail hours Wednesday through Saturday.
Okay.
So I'll be off on Monday. Technically, I should be off on Monday. Tuesdays, I'll be in here full-time working without any retail customers coming in, so that I have a huge chunk of time. I try to work in big time blocks so that I don't get distracted by having to do too many things at once.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you kind of came from doing your art on your side, and now you have your own business. So what is it about it that kind of like makes you feel like successful and fulfilled, and like this is kind of like where you should be?
It's the whole success, the word success kind of scares me a little bit, because I'm definitely, I mean, if we're being honest, I'm not at a point where I'm paying myself yet. I'm at a point where the business is sustaining itself enough that I can keep going.
Right.
The goal ultimately would be that I can pay myself and sort of truly make a living doing it. I'm just not quite there yet.
Right.
I do get to be my own boss, which is both good and bad. I get to be in control of pretty much everything that I do, but on the downside of that is I have to stay pretty motivated on days when I don't feel like coming to work.
Right, yeah, because you don't have that boss. What is one of the like harder things you've hit that you didn't expect, that you've kind of had to work through in, trial by error or just by kind of experimenting? What does that kind of look like?
Well, I mentioned to you that I redid the showroom this weekend, and part of that is just looking at how people come in and interact with the displays and the work, and the questions that they ask and the things that they have to say, and try to figure out what's working. If they're not looking at the work and they're heading to the back to look at the studio, I need to figure out why that's happening and try to change that. It's been interesting. You hang up signage that says "please don't," blah blah blah, and nobody reads the signs. So just trying to figure out sort of that psychology of retail and how I can work within that, because that's something that, again, along with not getting the business experience in art school, that's not something that they teach you either. So
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And what is some like good advice you could give to somebody who's kind of trying to start their own business or interested in starting their business? What's some things that have helped you?
I would just say to talk to as many small business owners as you can, especially who are maybe in the same business that you're interested in, or similar types of businesses. People might not want to give you a whole lot of advice if you're wanting to start a vintage shop and you go into a competing vintage shop and ask them questions, they're not going to be so forthcoming. But if you're asking people who are doing similar ideas, like somebody who's doing something that is marketed toward millennials, something that's trendier, you want to seek those people out and kind of, even if you don't ask them face to face, look on their Instagram account and see what kinds of things they're doing, and just sort of seek out that information from them.
Experience from them. Great. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time.